Hi boys and girls. This video is on problem solving with area. Today I'm going to show you a variety of problems involving area, involving squares and rectangles, and I'm going to take you step by step on how to solve those problems. Before we begin, I'm going to show you this, and I'm going to leave this up for the whole video. This is kind of a step-by-step process to solve your area problems, beginning with reading the problem. And as we walk through these, I'm going to take you through this process each time. We're going to determine if our question is involving a square or a rectangle, and I'm going to show you some tips on how to figure that out. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to draw a picture of our problem. After we draw our picture of a square or a rectangle, we're going to label the parts we know. We're then going to proceed from there to write the formula for our area, for the rectangle or the square, fill in what we know with our formula, and then last solve. So I think this is a good process and key to figuring out what we are being asked to do. So the first thing we're going to do before I start is I'm going to divide my board in half right here. On this side, we're going to draw the solve problem out, and then on this side, we're going to solve the problem. So, and as we go through these, we'll go through this process with every question. Let's start. A swimming pool has a length of 32 and a width of 8 feet. What is the area? Question mark. So I see my question is asking for area. And I have two words in here that are very important for me to tell me what I need to draw. I see the words length and I see the words width. And also if you look at your numbers, 32 and 8, those are different numbers. That tells me that we have a rectangle. So I'm going to draw a rectangle. Label the parts I know. Now 32 is the bigger number. 8 is the smaller number. And there we go. So I've drawn it out. I've labeled the parts that I do know that are in my problem right here. That's the second and third step. Now that I know I have a rectangle, my next step is to come over here to solve it. I'm going to start by writing my formula. Area equals length times width. So then I just fill in with what I know. I know my length and I know my width. So I'm going to go from here. So that's going to be 32 times 8. And then lastly, I'm going to solve it. So 32 times 8. 8 times 2 is 16. 24 plus 1 makes 25. So 256, and then last, put on your label. Square units of measure because area measures inside and we were using feet. So there's my answer, okay? Step by step. Let's look at another one. I'm gonna take this away. I'm gonna erase this. I'm going to erase this, but I'm gonna leave our draw it and solve it. We're going to do that for every problem. Let's look at the next one. A table has a side that measures 5 feet. What is the area? So we're trying to solve for area. And if you look, I have one number and I see the word side. Now I don't see the word length and I don't see the word width, and I have one number. I have the word side. Now this word side tells me that it's probably going to be a square because squares have sides that are equal in length. And when you have one number and it's not giving me the area or it's not giving me a length or width, I have one number, that tells me that that one number can go on all my sides. So that tells me square. Now, 5 feet is what I know. But I also know that it's a square, and I know squares have equal sides. So even though it doesn't have 2 5s, I know that that is 5 feet as well. So I've gone through my second step. First step is I figured out it was a square. Second step, I drew the square. Third step, I labeled the parts I know. Now I'm going to go to my fourth step. I'm going to write my formula for area of a square, and that is area equals side times side. Now I'm going to fill in what I know. Well, I know that my side is 5 feet, but since it's a square, they are both 5 feet, And then my last step is to solve and do the math. Area equals 25, and then put your label back on. We said feet, square feet, okay? Those were pretty basic. So just remember, whenever you see the word side, it's probably going to be a square. And if you're given one number, that's probably going to be a square as well. So I kind of had two clues there that was talking about a square. Let's look at another problem. So again, I'm going to erase my draw, my solve. We're going to leave everything else there. Here we go. Let's look at another one. Okay. A room has an area of 108 square feet. The width is 9. I'm going to underline my question. What is the length? Okay. So this time I know my area. It says it right here. It has an area of 108. And I see that word square right there. That tells me too that I already know my whole. I know the whole amount. Now I also have another number, and that's my width, which is 9, but my question is in length. So I see the words width and I see the words length. That tells me it's going to be a square. I looked for my clues. That tells me it's going to be a square. I'm going to draw that, the rectangle. I'm sorry, that's a rectangle. And so I'm going to draw that rectangle. Now I'm going to label the parts that I do know. So I draw it. Now I'm going to label what I know. Look in your problem. Now this time I have an area. I like to put the area on the inside. And then it also gives us a width of 9. And here's my width right here, 9 feet. And I'm also going to put a question for my question. What is the length? So I'm going to put that length there. So I figured out it was talking about a rectangle. I drew the rectangle. I labeled what I know from the problem. Now I'm going to go on with my fourth step, and I'm going to write this formula down for area of a rectangle, and that is area equals length times width. Now I'm going to fill in what I know. So I'm going to fill in these things. What do I know? Well, I know my area here. It's 108. I do not know my length. That is my question, but I'm going to go ahead and fill in my 9 for my width. So this is a case of kind of thinking backwards. We know the whole. Now we just have to ask ourselves, what times 9 gets us to 108? That's what we're trying to solve. Something times 9. Something times 9. So if you do the math, you should be able to figure out that to get 108, you would do 12 times 9. And that would be our missing length. So instead of writing area, we were trying to solve for our length. Our length is 12, and that was in feet as well. Now, if you're unsure about that with these problems where you have to work backwards, you can go back the opposite way now and try to solve it. So if you kind of know the area's length times width, go back and think about it. Is 12 times 9 108? Yes, it is. So this is a case of working backwards. This is a case of figuring out that it was a rectangle because it had a length and a width. And then we put our formula down, and then we plugged in the parts that we did know, and we plugged in that missing part. So I drew it, and then I solved it. Draw it and solve it. Okay, let's look at 2 more examples for problem solving. Now this next one is going to have 2 examples with it, and I did it on purpose so you could kind of see something a little bit different. Let's look at each type. First one says, a ping pong table measures 9 feet by 5 feet. What is the area? Question mark. So I don't see the word length. I don't see the word width. And if I look at my second problem, a table measures 3 feet by 3 feet. What is the area? Again, I don't see the words length, width, or side. I don't see those words, but I do have numbers, and your numbers can give you clues. Let's do the first one first. So if you look at your first one, you see this word by. That's kind of another word for your dimensions when you have 3 foot by 3 feet or 6 foot by 5 foot. That means you have 6 foot length by 5 foot width. Sometimes in problems, they just leave off those words length and width. It's easier to say by. If you go to Home Depot and you need to go by wood, you would say, I need a 2x4, please. that means you're getting a piece of wood that is 2 inches by 4 inches. So just when you see that word by, that just means it's describing your dimensions of either length and width or your sides. So let's look at our clues. So the first one on top has 9 by 5. Now if you look at 9 and you look at 5, those are different measures. Those are different sides. So that tells me rectangle or square. What do you think? Rectangle, because they're 2 different. So we determined it's a rectangle. I drew my rectangle. Now I'm going to label what I know. 9 feet by 5 feet means 9 feet by 5 feet. Okay, so I labeled what I knew. Now I'm going to write my formula for area of a rectangle. Area equals length times width. And now I'm going to fill in what I do know. I know my dimensions, 9 by 5, and now it's just a matter of solving. And it's square feet. Everything's in feet today. So that was an example of using those dimensions without the words length and width, but determining that this was a rectangle because my numbers are different. Now let's look at the second problem. Again, we're going to draw it and solve it. So my second problem says, a table measures 3 feet by 3 feet. What is the area? So here, I don't have the words length, width. I don't have the word side. I have my dimension word of by, 3 by 3. But I have 2 numbers, and those 2 numbers can tell me what I'm working with. And if you can see 3 and 3, those are the same. So what do you think that's going to be, a square or a rectangle? Yep, that's going to be a square. So let's draw our square. So I determined it was a square because my 2 numbers were the same. I drew my square. Now let's label what we know. Well, I know 3 feet by 3 feet. And let's determine the area. So now that I've drawn what I know, now I'm going to go with writing my formula. Formula for a square is side times side. Now I'm going to plug in what I know. And last, I'm going to solve. We know that 3 times 3 is 9, and that is in square feet. Okay, draw it, solve it. So you could see examples where you see that word by. This one was a rectangle, those 2 numbers are different. This one was a square because those 2 numbers are the same. Squares have same size sides. Let's do one more problem solving today. And this one's going to kind of take us into a multi-step. So let's look at it and then we'll solve. How much greater is the area of figure A than figure B? Okay, and I've got 2 figures here. Now, this is obviously going to be a multi-step. Let's figure out what we have to do. So I see my favorite words in math, how much greater than. That tells me I'm comparing 2 things. Here's your word than. What's on one side of that word than is what you're going to compare to the other side of it. So I've got figure A and figure B, and when I look at those figure A and figure B, they're already drawn for me. So for this one, I don't have to draw anything, but I do have to solve it. So I'm going to go ahead and erase this. These are already drawn for us, but we are going to solve it down here. So let's get started with figure A. So this is a rectangle. I'm going to start with doing my formula. Area equals length times width. I'm going to plug in what I know. 8 times 5. Area equals 40 square inches. Okay. Now my second figure, I have to solve this one. This is also a rectangle, so I'm going to start with my formula. Area equals length times width. I'm going to plug in what I know. My length is 7, my width is 3. Solve it. Now, that's just the first part. We have one more step. How much greater than? What does that tell me we're going to be doing? When we're comparing 2 things, we want to know how much more one thing is than another. I hope you know by now we have to subtract to find that difference. So let's do our subtraction now. So 40 is our greater number, so now I'm going to take my 40. We're going to subtract 21. For this, I have to regroup. That becomes a 10. 10 minus 1 is 9. 3 minus 2 is 1. And so my difference in the area of these two units is 19 square inches. Now this could have been a multi-step where it might have said to me, what is the total area of the two figures? And in that case, I would have solved for my areas for both. And then if it wanted the total area, then I would have to add those numbers. But this one was a subtract because we were looking for a difference, okay? So let's kind of just review what we've done today. Today, you're going to be problem solving with area. You are going to be given a variety of situations. Your problems will either involve a square or a rectangle. Once you determine what your problem is about, I want you to draw that square or rectangle. Look in your problem and label the parts that you know. Once you have determined what you have to be looking for, then you write your formula for either a square or a rectangle. Go back to your picture and fill in the parts that you know. And then your last step is to solve it and then add that label back at the end once you've solved that area, okay? I'm gonna put a picture of this on your lesson plans today so you can use this as a reference to help you through your problem solving. You're gonna be given a variety of situations where you're gonna have to find a missing part, either the missing area, a missing side, a missing length. And I think this is a good step-by-step to help you through that process. So, all right, thank you for watching today, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.